Welcome to the Athletic FC podcast with me, Akinwolere. On Saturday, Real Madrid players and the president Florentino Perez were booed by fans. On Tuesday, Real Madrid won emphatically in the Champions League as they beat Monaco, and it seemed to get the fans back on side. But is Perez still in hot water? Okay, here with us today we have our Real Madrid correspondent Guillermo and also Dermot Corrigan as well. Gentlemen, let's get into this. Dermot, we'll get to Perez soon, but let's discuss what has been, I guess, a tumultuous time for Madrid. I mean, nothing new really. Alonso sacked, fan protests. Can you just bring us round as to what on earth has been going on?
Yeah, tumultuous is definitely the word. There's always drama at Real Madrid. It's one of the fun parts of the job is following all the drama at Real Madrid. But even for Real Madrid, the last couple of weeks have been pretty spectacular. Xabi Alonso, coach who was appointed last season, was under pressure through the autumn. It looked like he may have saved his job, but then they were beaten in the Supercopa by Barcelona. They flew back from Saudi Arabia, and the following day, Xabi Alonso was fired. Then Arbeloa stepped up from the youth team coach to take over the job. His first game in charge brought Copa del Rey humbling exit at second-tier Albacete, the first time in history that Albacete had ever beaten Real Madrid under super dramatic circumstances, tambien, or also with a last-minute goal for Albacete. That really got a lot of the Real Madrid fans upset. The combination of all those factors, and at the weekend of the home game against Levante, there was an outpouring of that upset with whistles for Vinicius, for Bellingham, for other players, whistles for Arbeloa, and most interestingly, I guess, whistles and chants for Florentino Perez, the president, to resign, which is something that hadn't been seen in a long time at the Bernabeu. Things calmed down a bit last night. It seemed like a lot of the fans got what they had to say off their chest. They were mostly behind the team last night, and it also helps that they hammered a pretty poor Monaco side 6-1 to all but confirm they're going to go through in the Champions League, which was a bit of a relief for Arbeloa, a bit of a relief for Florentino. But there's still lots of issues there. It's still going to be a difficult job for Arbeloa. There's still issues with the squad. Fans were happy enough with the victory that last night, but if they lose again, who knows what will happen. And Perez has a lot of things to work out as well in the management of the club. So even for Real Madrid, it's a really interesting time to be following them.
Yeah, I mean, Guillermo, much has been made of the booing of certain players, Vinicius Jr., Jude Bellingham, for instance. Jude Bellingham scored yesterday. Vinicius yesterday was a star, 3-goal contributions and also a solo goal himself. I mean, there's been much conversation about Vinicius and how well he performs when the crowd is on his side. Is that what we saw yesterday?
Well, I don't know really, because at the start of the game, what we could hear, it wasn't as loud as against Levante, as clear as against Levante, but there were some whistles against Vinicius. I think that some of the fans at the Bernabeu still wanted to whistle him, to make him feel that they are unhappy. But as the game developed, I think that Vinicius came back, and it was more I think proof of his personality, of the I think the trust that his teammates like Mbappe have in him. That's a reality, and I think that because of Mbappe's words before the game, he said that they cannot only blame Vinicius because of the Madrid situation. I think that it helped the fans to realize that it's not only about Vini. And Vini, in the end, I think that managed to change the attitude of these fans, of these critics. And in the end, we all heard all the supporting chants in favor of Vinicius. And I think it was his own comeback. Now that we are talking about Real Madrid and we always talk about comebacks, I think that it was definitely a great night for him. Obviously, as he's an emotional player, everyone describes him as that, and he's beloved by his teammates because of that. I think that it's necessary that the fan base supports him, and it's always helpful for him and better for him, because I think he spent like 16 games without scoring. It was a really difficult time for him. I think yesterday he acknowledged in the Brazilian television TNT that it was frustrating for him to face problems inside the field and still hearing like voices of concern outside of the field. It didn't help, definitely. So hopefully right now the situation has stabilized a little bit and it will be better for Vinicius.
Well, Dermot, you've written a great piece on Florentino Perez this week. And in his 2 stints as president, I mean, it's incredible. 57 trophies and 6 European Cups. Absolutely outstanding. But I guess his legacy is much more than that, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. He's up there with Santiago Bernabeu as the most successful presidents or the biggest figures in Real Madrid's entire history. And he's had such an impact on the club, both on and off the pitch. When he took over the presidency in 2000 with the audacious swoop of promising to sign Luis Figo if the fans voted him in as president, and then going to Barcelona and taking Barcelona's best player Figo and bringing him to the Bernabeu, which was super audacious thing to do and set the line for the ambition that he has, for the eye to bring in the biggest stars, to get the biggest stars playing for Real Madrid, which he believes then generates the biggest revenues off the pitch, which makes Madrid the richest club in world football. It makes more than 1 billion euros a year off the pitch. And then on the pitch, in his first presidency was a bit of a roller coaster for sure. They won the Champions League with Zidane, another huge Galacticos, scoring the goal in 2002. But the wheels started to come off pretty quickly after that. Went through a lot of different coaches, and then he ended up resigning as president in 2006, which is when Ramon Calderón took over as president. And then in 2009, Florentino came back as president, and since then he has been not quite as audacious and bombastic maybe in signing Galacticos as previously, but they've still been really, really successful. They won a lot of Champions Leagues. Players like Cristiano Ronaldo, Gareth Bale, Luka Modric, Sergio Ramos in the team. Meanwhile, off the pitch, Florentino has continued to grow the club's revenues. He's rebuilt the stadium, which is pretty spectacular at the moment, and he's also centralized a lot of power in himself at the club. He's the guy who makes all the big decisions, and the biggest of those decisions at the moment is around potentially selling a stake in the club to an outside investor, which is a super controversial thing to do and which not all fans are in favour of. So when the team weren't playing great, and when they went from Ancelotti to Alonso to Arbeloa, then they got knocked out of the Copa del Rey last week on top of the Supercopa loss to Barcelona, was when a lot of the frustration came out at the stadium at the weekend, both I think in how poorly the team has played over the last 18 months or so, and also maybe some fans who are not so happy with the off the pitch stuff at the Bernabeu at the moment, and that that came out in the response and the chants against Florentino.
Guillermo, I mean, look, we've spoken about the chants against Perez, from a certain section of the Madrid fans. But I mean, look, from the outside looking in, I'm looking at the La Liga table. Real Madrid are just 1 point behind Barcelona. They're in a good position to qualify for the next phase of the Champions League. If either of those two competitions they're still in contention for, it might be a great season. Why are the fans so upset?
Well, I think that the first reason is always the results, sporting results. And as they had just lost against Albacete, as Dermot said previously, I think it was clear that there was unhappiness by the fan base because of that, because of the Xabi Alonso's sacking. I think that fans felt that it wasn't only Xabi Alonso who we all should, blame. There were other guilty characters inside this story, probably the board, probably the players themselves, and that's why they whistled the board and the players against Levante. And probably there is another reason now that we are talking about future changes within the club and around the ownership and future investors. I do think that there are I'd say some fans or some Real Madrid members who feel that they are disconnected to the club's decisions, and they felt that the club is taking some decisions, controversial decisions, and they are not really counting on them. They are senior members probably. They have spent many years and a lot of money in the club, and they think that they have the right to decide what is going on and what will happen, and probably because firstly, because of the sporting reasons, and secondly, because of the institutional or the financial reasons, I'd say that was like the main thing to explain the whole situation. Yeah.
Well, look, Guillermo, Real Madrid are arguably the biggest club in the world. Can you give us an insight into the pressures it must be like to be the president of a club like this?
I mean, the level of stress is something difficult to describe, I guess. But eventually you get used to it, because if otherwise Florentino wouldn't spend 17 years in a row, right? Being president, and it must feel good as well. But yeah, I think that the level of pressure is directly linked to the level of demand that the president asks to the team. President is always asking the coaches and the team to perform, and they cannot face 2 defeats in a row. That's why he also faces this level of demand. But not only from a sporting side of things, also from a financial point of view. I guess that Real Madrid cannot afford to, for example, have to have losses in a financial year. They have along all these years, I think they have had profits. They break even. So I think it's a sustainable model, or at least from a financial point of view, because of this level of pressure.
Yeah, I was thinking about the sustainability of this, Dermot, because, we've seen teams like Manchester United, obviously still commercially viable, but dropped off when it comes to performance on the field. But how sustainable is it for one team to constantly want to win everything?
It doesn't make sense, really. That's Real Madrid. It's Barcelona as well. Like, they are just two completely different clubs from Manchester United or from Bayern Munich or Arsenal or PSG. There's something special about them. There's something chaotic about them. There's something really attractive about them as well. Madrid are able to sign players like Mbappe on a free transfer, for instance, that, it's difficult to see any other club, maybe apart from Barcelona, getting that. Barcelona are able to get players to come in and play for them for lower wages than they would ask for if they were moving to PSG or to Saudi Arabia or to play in the Premier League. So it's part of the allure and the glamour, the history of the club, the heritage that they have, which means that even when they go through difficult times or they have disastrous seasons, that they're able to bounce back so quickly. Like, look at Barcelona and their financial difficulties that they have. We've reported a lot on The Athletic about the levers and the way that Joan Laporta, the Barcelona president, has dealt with the fact that they have basically no money, but they also need to win trophies. They've been able to do it quite well. You could criticize maybe some of the decisions that Laporta has made, the same as you can criticize some of the decisions that Florentino Perez has made. But in the end, they have continued to keep their clubs afloat and keep them winning trophies, and if not winning Champions Leagues, at least competing quite well at the top level. Barca back to the semi-finals of the Champions League last year. And a lot of that does come down to the president as well. You need to have a huge personality. You need to be a guy who has a huge amount of confidence in yourself, charisma, able to pull people along with you. Also to be, a good political operator, to be able to win the elections. You need to keep a handle on the media. You need to be able to deal with superstar players. You need to make it clear that you're the most important person at the club. Look, at Barcelona, to pull an example of Bartomeu, when he was the president, Messi was clearly the most important person at the club. It wasn't the club president. But now it's Laporta's the biggest name at Barcelona, and Florentino Perez is the biggest name at Madrid. And, Laporta has elections coming up, and Florentino, can't go on forever either. So whoever does come in and take over the job, it's going to be huge for them. But in the meantime, the two guys are doing a decent job in very difficult circumstances.
Yeah, Guillermo, Dermot makes a really interesting point, and he got me thinking, especially at the fact that Perez has been there for a long time. And I wonder how important those political connections are in terms of being able to get a group of people to back your vision, but also be able to connect with some of the greatest players in the world and bring them to the club.
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of experience, probably of contacts. And I think it's not only about Florentino in this case. I guess that Jose Angel, the general manager, has an important role as well, connecting to the agents, to the players, and running the operative, because Florentino obviously is really busy always, not only with Real Madrid but with his own company ACS, which is mainly focused on building and infrastructure. So Jose Angel is also running a lot of things inside the club, and probably because of that we should mention him. But it's true that from now on, when we talk about Florentino's heir or Florentino's substitute, the future of Real Madrid, really, I think we will have to take into account if he's really capable, or if she is really capable of handling all the pressure in terms of contracts, contract situations, possible potential moves, prestige inside the industry, because it's also about how the rest of the clubs see Real Madrid and see their leaders, right? It's also leverage for the operation. So I think it's in an interesting point of view, but not only focus on Florentino, but also Jose Angel and probably the head of scouting, Juni Calafat. Yeah.
Yeah, Dermot, he's one of the most powerful men in football. It goes without saying. We know all the conversations around the Super League, for instance. How has he managed to maintain that level of power?
It's a very good question. He's a very skillful political operator. Like, he came up through his career. He's an engineer by trade, but at one stage he wanted to be a politician. Florentino Perez. He ran for office in Spain in the 1980s for a small party after democracy had returned to Spain in the 1980s, and didn't get elected. Moved into business, but he's always been a really skillful political operator, and he has the contacts, as Guy was saying. He knows everybody in Spain and across all the parties. He's close to people on the Conservative Party, he's close to more people in the Socialist Party as well. He's really good at being able to make deals. He's a guy who can have a strategic view. You know, when he came into Real Madrid first, the club had huge debts. They also had the training ground, which was in a really great location within the financial district of the centre. He was able to do a deal with the local council to sell that site to the local council. There's now 4 big skyscrapers. The biggest buildings in Madrid are on that site. They're called after the Galacticos: Zidane, Figo, Beckham, and Ronaldo. He bought the training ground out by the airport where it is now, which is also a huge, great piece of real estate. And now there's more developments going on around that, which the club are going to benefit from as well. So he's always a couple of steps ahead of the game, Florentino Perez, which is why within Spain, he's so highly regarded. The Super League is a low point on his CV, I would say, and helps to explain how his reputation outside of Spain is maybe not as high as his reputation within Spain, because that didn't go well at all when it was launched back in 2021. And Perez still continues to fight it. They still want to believe that it's going to be possible to launch the Super League. So he's a very canny operator. He's a guy who likes power, who likes to be involved in making these type of deals, these type of decisions, is very good at them. And that's how he's been able to remain in charge of the club for so long.
You guys listen to us. Now we want to hear from you. We're asking you to fill in a quick survey about you and your podcast habits by going to theathletic.com/survey26. 3 lucky entries will win £100 or $100 worth of Amazon vouchers as well. So whether you're a long-time listener or a new one, we want your feedback. Go to theathletic.com/survey26. That's theathletic.com/survey26. The link is also in our episode description. Really appreciate your time. Well, look, Madrid have changed coaches from Ancelotti to Alonso to Arbeloa in just 9 months without any obvious improvement. Obviously, we saw what we did last night in the Champions League, but that still doesn't erase some of the cracks still within the club, does it?
Yeah, for sure. Like, it was brilliant for Madrid to win so handsomely against Monaco last night, and for Vinicius to get the goal, for Bellingham to score as well, for just to have that, to move on from the awkwardness of the weekend against Levante was really good. But it doesn't mean that much has really changed. You know, the same problems are in the squad that Ancelotti had to deal with. Still haven't replaced Toni Kroos or Luka Modric, a midfield playmaker, is really needed. The defense is still, so many injuries in defense. There's a lot of players there who just can't get back 100% fit, who are not regularly available to the coach. That's what Ancelotti struggled with. That was part of the reason, wasn't the full reason, but it was part of the reason that Alonso wasn't able to get the team playing the way that he wanted to do it. And there's no sign of them signing anybody in January to give to Arbeloa. So Arbeloa is going to have to deal with those issues himself, try and come up with solutions to those issues. And we've very little to go off really when trying to predict how it will go with Arbeloa, because he's come up through the youth ranks at Madrid. He's had a lot of success coaching the underage teams. He did okay with the Castilla youth team in Spain's third tier over the first half of the season. But it's a huge step up to be the Real Madrid coach. And we're just going to have to see. The game at the weekend against Villarreal is going to be pretty interesting, because Villarreal doing really well in La Liga this season. They're on the fringes of the title race themselves. I don't think they'll go the whole way, but they're a good team. They're a really well organised team, and they're well set up to counter-attack and take advantage of those issues in the Madrid side. So I would say that just because they beat Monaco doesn't really mean that they're going to beat Villarreal, and we might have a better idea of how it's going to work out for Arbeloa, or what the signs are after that game.
Yes, Guillermo, there were also boos for manager Álvaro Arbeloa. And, he said after the match against Levante, I know where the whistles are coming from and where the campaigns are coming from. These are not people who do not like Florentino. These are people who do not like Real Madrid. They will not trick me. All we Madristas are lucky to have a president who is the most important person, along with Bernabeu, in the club's history. Look, Arbeloa is showing serious loyalty there. Is that what Real Madrid want? A coach, a manager that is part of the club's fabric politically? Because, some might say perhaps a change of regime in terms of managerial frontier anyway could be very useful to Real Madrid. Or do they just want someone that can answer to the president?
It's a tough question, really. I do think that the Arbeloa's position has already faced some criticism from Real Madrid legends like Jorge Valdano, who said a few days ago that he shouldn't divide the Madridistas, he shouldn't divide the Madrid fans. I think that there has been tension, and tension should dissipate and should be clarified. And I do think that when Arbeloa was asked about his position, about what he said about these two different sections of Madridistas, the non-Madridistas and the Madridistas, because of the Florentino whistles, he didn't want to clarify what he meant by that. There is something that we should bear in mind as context, that is that in the past there were ultras at Real Madrid. They were called Ultrasur, and Florentino took the decision of leaving them out of the Bernabeu. And probably Arbeloa, in some way, he tried to focus the Florentino's dismissal chance around this ultra fan section. But I think this is something really controversial. I don't have clarity on what he meant. He didn't want to clarify either. And I think that the best thing for any Madrid coach who has proved really successful, like for example Zinedine Zidane or Carlo Ancelotti, is that they have really united the Madrid fan base. It doesn't really matter if they are, or if they seem connected to the board, because if they are winning, they are connected. What it matters is that more than I'd say that the narrative. I guess that when you are in a bad position, or when you are in a tough moment, you try to relocate or reposition the narrative and to move away the pressure. And maybe is what Arbeloa had in his mind when he was saying that. But I think that we have come from a period of pure success at Real with Ancelotti and with Zidane, and nobody was talking really about Madridistas and non-Madridistas at the Bernabeu. They are all Madridistas, and that's why they pay the ticket.
And any case for Zidane coming back, then, if you say someone that can unite the Madridistas and also the board, I mean, come on, he's waiting.
And also,
he still needs a
not
job.
only the board or the Madrid fan base, but also the dressing room, right? I think it's really good. So it's always like a good call. The thing is that, as far as we know, and as far as we reported at the Athletic, he has in his mind, according to people close to him, the French national team bench. So let's see in the following months, because it's true that last time that Real Madrid was in a situation similar to this one was in 2019. Julen Lopetegui was sacked. Then the Castilla coach, then Solari, moved to the first team, but it didn't work it out as planned. And then Zidane stepped it up in the last games of the season. So you cannot, I think, predict what is in Zidane's mind. I think he has shown that if he's needed, he will be there. Even that there is the French national team bench available maybe in a few months after the World Cup in the States. Let's see, because I don't want to say for sure. No, Zidane is no longer an option. I think that Zidane will be always linked to Real. Doesn't matter what happens.
Okay, Dermot, what do you think to that question? Because I think being at the helm at Real Madrid, it feels like somewhat political, presidential kind of position, isn't it? I mean, Arbeloas basically saying that anyone's not a fan of the club is basically speaking out. But the reality is that what they want in charge? Someone that's basically firmly in the position of the club and not someone that speaks out against the club?
It's part of the super difficult role that is being Real Madrid coach. It's one of the reasons that it's one of the most difficult managerial jobs in world sport, arguably, and Zidane was really, really good at it. Zidane has been really close to Florentino Perez. He had a similar enough trajectory to Arbeloa in that he came up through the youth ranks at the Castilla job as well and moved up. But he never was seen as, one of Florentino's men, whereas Arbeloa is firmly seen as a key supporter of the president. And when Arbeloa came out at the weekend and said that there were, these people who are whistling the team or whistling Florentino, they're not Real Madrid fans, that went down really badly with a lot of people. Guillermo mentioned Valdano there, who felt he had to have a say on it, and a lot of just Madrid socios who I know and people who go to the stadium who they feel that they are the owners of the club. It's not Florentino. Florentino is there as to look after the club on behalf of them, but not to make the big decisions. And that's still a sticking point that's there. And Arbeloa is going to be tied to Florentino now, no matter what. The great thing about Zidane was that he was his own man, even in the dressing room, where he was close to the players. He would have huge respect for Cristiano Ronaldo or Ramos or the biggest names in the dressing room, and they also had huge respect for him as a former player. But Zidane was also happy to come out and criticize them in public. He would say the standards are not good enough. We need to up things. We need to work harder. This is just not Real Madrid. You're not up to the standard. And I've been a bit surprised at Arbeloa over the last couple of press conferences on how close he's been to the players, how much he's praised them, how much he said that they are great, considering the bad results recently and considering that they've lost a lot of Galacticos recently. I don't think that's exactly what the Real Madrid fans wanted to hear. Maybe lighting a fire under some of them might be better off long term. So we're going to have to see. Maybe Arbeloa, the plan is to be nice to them and then to gently move some of them aside or to gently make changes in the team as maybe somebody like Ancelotti would do. But it's a different approach than Zidane's approach. And yeah, I agree with Guille. Like, Zidane is always around Real Madrid. And if Zidane wasn't, as we're all pretty sure, holding out for the French job after the World Cup, he would be the Real Madrid coach again. I don't think it's a case that the club looked and said, do we appoint Arbeloa or do we appoint Zinedine Zidane or do we look for somebody else? It was that they were in a tight spot. They had decided that Alonso couldn't really continue, and Arbeloa was basically the only option that they had to step up and take over. So it's a lot of pressure on him, and it's a huge job, and we're going to have to see whether he's up to it.
Okay, Guillermo, we mentioned previously Florentino Perez, and he's still the man in charge, but there was a time where he stepped away and came back into the job, right? Could this happen again? I mean, because Real Madrid are in a very different position now. People keep talking about the changes in the managers, the changes of the players, but one person that still stays is the president.
Yeah, I mean, he has spent already, I'd say, from 2009, 17 years, and it's normal that after this period of stability that the talks start. He's almost 80 years old, so it's also normal that there are rumors about him leaving soon. The thing is that there were reports about Florentino leaving in 2026, so this year. And what the board suggested to us at that moment is that they are wrong. Let's see, because as you said, it's a difficult position. We are always talking about managers, and it's interesting to follow what's next after Florentino, right? Is for me and for the British reader or the British audience, I will compare it a little bit to the Sir Alex Ferguson, spell.
Yeah, in Manchester United.
That's right.
Yeah.
After Sir Alex Ferguson, I feel that Manchester United have faced many problems because Sir Alex was really important within the club, and probably that's gonna happen at Real as well, because Florentino has taken all the big shots at Real, so it's not so easy to replace. But yeah, it's interesting. I think that related to this is the obviously the fan base whistling, all the atmosphere, the tense atmosphere. And I think that is worth mentioning something related to what Dermot has said. The members really feel that they are the owners of the club. And that's a good thing to remind, because Florentino, every time he has had the chance to speak about the ownership model, he has always repeated the same. Members will remain being the owners.
It's really difficult for Florentino Perez to imagine that anybody else could be the Real Madrid president, that anybody else could be able to take decisions over the future of the club, that anybody else has the personality to do it, that anybody else understands Real Madrid the way he understands Real Madrid, because it's so important to him, and he's been such a huge figure in the club for so long. And he remembers, he goes back to the Santiago Bernabeu days. He used to go to the stadium as a 5-6-year-old kid. He used to watch Di Stefano and Puskas and these guys winning European Cups, scoring great goals. And he's recreated that over the last couple of decades at Real Madrid with the Galacticos, with all the Champions Leagues again. And it's difficult for him and for anybody else to go and do it a third time. Is going to be really difficult. And around what we're talking about the bringing in the investor into the club.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Florentino, he talks a lot about how it's more difficult all the time to compete against the wealth of the Premier League and against the state-owned clubs, people like Paris Saint-Germain, who can basically, have unlimited money, they find ways around the rules to sign whoever they want. And Madrid are bound a little bit by their owner model. They can't. Perez is a really rich guy, but he can't put his own money into the club, and socios can't put their own money into the club. So the way of looking for an investor to come in pretty sure from talking to people who have been involved in the deal, is that Florentino sees it as a way of protecting the club, as a way of, when he is not there, whenever that is, and I think it's still going to be quite a long way away, but when that moment comes, that the club is able to keep going and to compete against your Manchester United or your Paris Saint-Germain or your Bayern Munich or Chelsea or whoever it is. Coming up with a way to do that is being very difficult for them. To offer an investor something that would be worth their while, if they're going to give €1 billion to come into Real Madrid, what do they get for that? And then on the other side, smoothing it over with the owners, with the members. There's a lot of, as Guilla says there, maybe Madrid might be converted into a limited company. But then what happens? How do you do that? Practically, how does it work? If you have a share, can you sell your share? Do you get what happens if the club makes a profit? Do you get dividends on that? All those types of things. If you can give money to the investor as a dividend, why don't you give money to the shareholders? All this type of stuff is super difficult to work out. And that's why there's so many doubts around the project. That's why there's so much tension around it. And it's, as always, it's super interesting to see. And it's really difficult to predict how it's going to work out.
Okay. Dermot, let's go back to the football before I let you guys go. Villarreal next in La Liga. We've obviously talked about them playing Benfica after that. I mean, there are still gaping holes in this squad, and we've spoken about the midfield situation at Dermot and how much they need a creative midfielder in many respects. Look, Champions League heritage is one thing, but league positioning, Villarreal are just behind them. Is this a real test now of how Arbeloa can take this team forward?
Yeah, I think it's a huge game for Arbeloa and for the rest of Madrid season at Villarreal at the weekend. If they can win and put in a really good performance, it sets them up really well. It'll move on from the Alonso era. It won't make Alonso look great, I guess, in retrospect, but it will set them up really well. If they lose, especially if they don't play well and it's all the old problems emerge again, then it's going to be difficult for them. Like we were talking about Zidane as well. When Zidane came in, it was a different squad that he was taking over. It was really deep. I remember, back in 2015, 2016, the Madrid bench would be people like James Rodriguez, Alvaro Morata, Kovacic, Rafael Varane, Pepe, was either Varane or Pepe playing alongside Ramos. There were really high quality substitutes that would have walked into most other teams around the league, or definitely in La Liga, definitely around Champions League as well. Whereas now they've made a lot of bets on younger players, and guys like Guler and Mastantuono could turn out to be really top stars for the club in the future, but it's asking a lot for them at the moment to come in and be the main men in the team. So yeah, I think domestically, Madrid are still in the La Liga title race. Barca dropped points at the weekend. Barca have their own issues in their squad. So Barca are favourites, but Madrid, especially if they win at Villarreal at the weekend, are likely to push them all the way. But in the Champions League, I think they'll probably win at Benfica next week. They'll probably go through in the top 8. They'll have a bit more time to prepare for the knockout rounds. But when the really big games come around, if they get, Arsenal knocked them out quite easily last season, and I don't think Madrid are much better than they were last season, and Arsenal are probably a good bit better than they were. So Bayern Munich, the top Premier League teams, Paris Saint-Germain are still quite a few steps ahead of Madrid, I would say, just looking at their squads, at the depth of the squad and at the quality within the squad. So it's a huge, huge job for Arbeloa.
Okay, fantastic, gentlemen. I really appreciate your time as always. Guillermo, Dermot, thanks for joining us. Also, thank you guys for joining us too. We'll catch you soon. For more from the Athletic FC podcast, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We've got top journalists like David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the entire season. Make sure you don't miss an episode of the Athletic FC. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts from.